but you spend pretty much your whole life in Excel sheets. And it makes you very comfortable with numbers.
Welcome to a new episode of Leaders of Growth. My today's guest is Daniel Layfield, someone who has seen growth from the inside at very, very different scales.
So I think when you think of like growing a subscription product, there's kind of like 5 or 6 layers you have to dial in. There's like how users discover the product. It's kind of like pricing and packaging, how you do the onboarding part of it, how you do the recurring habit loop, how you do payment processing, and how you do kind of churn management.
Daniel led growth at Codecademy, helping scale the business from 10 to 50 million ARR, and then later at Uber. Welcome to a new episode of Leaders of Growth. I'm Milan Savov, CEO of SmartClick, where we help B2B SaaS companies get to the top of AI searches and Google and turn visibility into high-quality organic leads. And these days we solve two of the biggest problems which SaaS companies are actually facing, which are not showing up in AI search results or dealing with the traffic drop, which directly impacts their qualified leads. This podcast is all about growth, as you know, so the kind that comes from understanding the systems, not just chasing tactics. And my today's guest is Daniel Layfield, someone who has seen growth from the inside at very, very different scales. Daniel led growth at Codecademy, helping scale the business from 10 to 50 million ARR, and then later at Uber. And today he advises companies on how to grow subscription business sustainability. Daniel, it's great to have you here. So how are you today?
Yeah, thanks, Milan. Great to be here. I'm doing great.
That's great. So would you like to introduce to people watching this episode?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say my background is what I always say is on the kind of intersection of product and growth. So about half my career has been in growth. So I run the growth team at Codecademy. The other half of my career has been running traditional big product teams. So I ran the team at Uber Eats, and now I'm a product director at a company called Diligent. So what I always find most interesting about that challenge is like if the product is set up correctly, it should be set up for growth. But most product organizations aren't like inherently focused on that.
That's really great. So before Codecademy and Uber, what were like the experience which shaped you and your mindset around growth?
Yeah, great question. So I started my career in management consulting and finance. So for folks in the US, like I worked at a company called Booz Allen, which is a big consulting firm. I worked at a place called JP Morgan, which most people know. Really, the thing that the skill set that gave me is those are very like quantitative environments. So I spent, I never did anything particularly fancy in finance. I was always kind of like a middle office person. But you spend pretty much your whole life in Excel sheets. And it makes you very comfortable with numbers and calculating and mental models and like distilling things down into measurable parts.
Yeah.
I think that's probably like the first skill set I took into growth and product management.
That's nice. Usually these days when the leadership team is discussed, the Excel sheets are not so popular there.
Yeah.
Great. So was there like a personal moment or maybe failure early in your career that actually changed how you think about building products, building companies?
Yeah, I'd say when I started as a product manager, the hardest thing to figure out is like the missing parts of your skill set. So like good product and growth people are like a mashup of quantitative skills, product skills, measurement skills, design skills, like systems thinkers. And you tend to kind of come in to the skill set with like one of those skills. I came in kind of through the like the analytical side of things, but it means like I'm terrible at design when I start. I don't have like a sense of how products should be built. So it means when you're handing projects over to an engineering team to be built, you end up handing stuff that's either like way too big, way too small, and you don't get a good sense of like how you drive growth sustainably. You hit a couple kind of like pitches that get thrown your way, but you do a lot of missing too.
Yeah. I think the most important topic which we can cover here is how you actually helped Codecademy to grow from 10 to 50 million ARR. So
yeah, sure.
Can you just share us what was like the the first big moves which you took, which actually unlocked the growth?
Yeah, sure. So I'll set the scene a little bit. So Codecademy, for those unfamiliar, was really like a 2010s like big presence on the internet. So it comes out of Y Combinator in 2011. It's probably the first high quality like online learn to code experience. So from probably 2011 to when I got there in 2016-ish, traffic booms. We're probably getting 25 million people a year on the site. We have tons of inherent like natural organic SEO momentum. We have
That's
tons
great.
and tons of free signups. And the product quality is really, really high. And we're riding kind of a societal wave of learning to code. So we have a lot of kind of like things going for us. I think when I got there, we already had like a paid subscription product, but we kind of didn't know how to optimize it. It was like working. Maybe we were at about 5 million ARR, but mostly because like we're getting hundreds of thousands of people on the site a month. We're not that good at like growing the product itself. So when I say growth, most of the work I did at Codecademy is really conversion and monetization of existing traffic. So we learned a ton about how do you take like an existing traffic source and sell a subscription product more effectively. I know much, much more about that than how I get the traffic to begin with.
Yeah, that's cool. And because we are also in the SEO and in the traffic game, so do you maybe have an idea how actually you attracted that bigger amount of traffic? Did you have
Honestly,
like any particular strategy or what happened?
it was the years before I was there, but kind of what I could see from the outside is like we rode a really early wave of PR. So our founder, Zach's very, very smart, very, very good at media. So he was on TV shows, on the news. We were getting talked about constantly. I'm going to make this number up. But like when I looked at our SEO tools in, let's say 2016, we have hundreds of thousands of backlinks because like we're written about everywhere in the media. And I think when you search learn to code, we're like the first or second option. We're like the second option for Python after Python's official site. So I wish I could take any credit for that or like tell you how that happened. But really, I think that was like the positioning and the leadership of the founders early on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you said that you actually didn't know how to monetize that, what happened after that? How did you figure it out to start being like a better business model?
Yeah, great question. So I think when you think of like growing a subscription product, there's kind of like 5 or 6 layers you have to dial in. There's like how users discover the product. It's kind of like pricing and packaging, how you do the onboarding part of it, how you do the recurring habit loop, how you do payment processing, and how you do kind of churn management. So it's not really like a silver bullet in any of those areas. There's a couple kind of brass bullets and a ton of lead bullets. I think when we started at Codecademy, like I don't even think we had like a pricing page set up in the header of the site. We didn't have like persistent upgrade buttons. So it took us a while because this is probably like 2017. Like the best practices aren't even like anywhere introduced into the product. We had 2 really successful wins in implementing trial models. So PM before me implemented one version of a trial. I implemented another version of it. I'd say there was probably like 5 big monetization wins that like altered the revenue trajectory. So it's the trial models, a couple pricing tests, like onboarding best practices, international payments, geo-based payments and pricing, and shifting a lot more people to annual plans.
Yeah, that really makes sense. So you separate that like into 6 layers, as I remember.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's great. And like, is there any moment where you actually realize that something big is actually coming out of these changes which you made?
Yeah, I think the memory that's kind of like the most vivid still for me is I forget what year this was, but we were trying to get to like 1 million in MRR. And I think
So we're talking from 5 million ARR to 12 million ARR.
Yeah, just about. So our founder, brought us all together for an all hands in probably November. I think we tried to hit it in December, and we literally like pulled out all the stops. We did literally everything we possibly could do, and then we were at our holiday party and we thought we were going to hit it. So we kind of celebrated. We signed this giant check to ourselves for $1 million and put it on the wall. And then we got there January 1st, and we realized we didn't calculate refunds. And like we missed
Yeah.
it after that big celebration. And we kind of just shoved that check in a closet and never talked about it again. But kind of like cut to 2 years later, I think we had a couple like almost like $1 million weeks without a ton of effort because we had so many renewals at that point. So we went from this kind of like we had to do literally everything we possibly could to get to $1 million a month. Cut to 2 or 3 weeks later, like our renewals are $500,000 a week. And it's like those are just happy users coming back. So the subscription game is really like you're starting a snowball rolling down a hill. And it's hard to get the initial momentum. But once you get it moving, these things just kind of compound.
Yeah. I would like to discuss this more, the layers game, which you mentioned before, more in details. But before going that, can you just tell me, because we all learn from our own mistakes mostly, but if we learn from others' mistakes, it's even better because we will not do the same mistake. So is there any like a mistake which you did or maybe your team which taught you like how to proceed further and was like big mistake at that point for the business?
Yeah, I'd say there's kind of two flavors of mistakes that happen kind of in product management style growth. There's like not putting enough effort into things that are working or putting too much effort into stuff that's unproven.
Wow.
So like, I've definitely made both of those mistakes a number of times. So in terms of not making, of not doubling down on stuff that's working, we shipped like a trial improvement. So we went from kind of what you would call a reverse trial where everybody gets the paid product and then they have to make a decision at the end, to a credit card upfront trial that was 7 days long. The credit card upfront one was like a 40% lift in conversion. It was a massive change to the business. It was worth like probably tens of millions of dollars a year in the later years. In retrospect, we should have kept testing that because we saw something work. But it was a 6-month project. It was really, really long. We had to re-architect the user database. The engineers are kind of burned out. But like, I still go back and think it's like maybe 10 days was the right length. Maybe 14 days was the right length. Like you saw something win, you shouldn't just give up on it. The reverse mistake also happens where you put too much of your engineering bandwidth into something you don't know is going to work. We ended up A/B testing like 3 different pricing page layouts because we were struggling to make a decision. But it meant like you have 3 times the like build out cost. You then run an A/B test that never got to significance. So you end up killing and blocking all the other work in that area for 12 weeks probably. And then at the end of that, you have to make a snap decision. So it's like we should have like made bolder decisions earlier and not relied on A/B tests when we struggled to make decisions.
Yeah. The first thing which you mentioned, that we usually like don't double down on what's working. I think it's like human nature because we are always have some shiny objects and then
100%.
think that the next thing will be better than this one. So we just try new things instead of just focus on one thing and just go as deep as possible.
Yeah, completely agree with that.
Yeah,
in product too, it's like it's very easy to fall into what I kind of think of as like the project tracker trap, where like your life as a product manager is sitting in executive meetings, running them through a list of stuff that you're doing. And like you look more productive if you have more stuff on that list. And if you're doing more stuff in parallel. Because like, wow, your team's so busy, you're doing 6 different things, but like that doesn't matter. It's the results that matter. So it's you should do one thing at a time that's really, really impactful. Because like work doesn't produce anything while it's being worked on. It's the stuff that's out in live that matters. But it is very, very, very hard to resist.
Yeah. But it's pretty much the same in the service, because what I noticed is even within our organization or within our client strategies, when we set up a strategy which is pretty good, sometimes some of the team maybe will see something on other strategy for other competitor, which on first sight it seems nice and it could be, but sometimes we don't give enough time for our strategy to work. So you can have a feedback, is it good enough or not? But
totally agree.
That's something we should learn all.
It's very hard to resist.
Let's get back to the layers which you mentioned. Would you like to explain each one of them? Because I think it's pretty important for subscription-based businesses to understand these layers most, so they can properly like set up the business on this?
Yeah, definitely. So I think when you think of kind of conversion rates, you're thinking of like kind of a giant multiplication equation. So if
Yeah.
you think of like your revenue, it's like traffic times conversion between different layers times price times retention rate times
Yeah.
churn rate. Like that's revenue. So if you think of where to work in subscription products, the first place I always suggest is what I would call like the choke points. So places that 100% of your traffic hits. Those are like how people buy the product, your payment processing, and how people leave the product. Because if you think of like the kind of conversion rate problem, once users like start to enter like a decision tree of pages,
Yeah.
none of those pages influence 100% of your traffic anymore. So it's a really common trap to fall into is you optimize a ton of effort on something only 5% of users see. And even if you get a 40% increase, like globally, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
I'd say in the purchase layer, the thing that really matters is like how and where users discover the product. So all products kind of solve a pain of some kind. You want to expose them to the product when they feel the pain of that product. So I worked with like a big hotel group to optimize their membership product. It's really tough to sell like a membership to discount hotels in abstract. It's much easier to sell it to them when they're buying a hotel room and they like immediately see the value of it. The Uber Eats membership model was the same thing. It gives you kind of like discounts on food and faster delivery time. It's significantly easier to sell that during the checkout process.
Yeah.
For food than like just kind of in abstract, would you like to be an Uber One member? Sell a little bit like that, but the closer they feel the pain, the better. I'd say that the other things that really matter for any product, but especially subscription products, is the payment processing flow. So like how well do you take people from pricing to plan selection to checkout? If you think of kind of like a focal points, like 100% of your marketing dollars go through your checkout page. Like a 1% increase in a checkout page conversion is 1% increase in your revenue. So like every little thing you can do on the page, from look, layout, mobile designs, compatibility across browsers, error copy, mobile payment methods. There's a reason if you look at kind of like Netflix's engineering team, they probably have hundreds of people working on checkout.
Yeah.
Because like everything they do goes through that single point.
Yeah. So what you suggest is first to look out where the most traffic came and start optimizing that until they come to the checkout, actually, to the
It's a good question. I'd say for most what I call like the vanilla startups, let's assume everything's kind of equal, things are broadly working, you have product market fit, etc. To me, the way I think about how to approach the problem is you want to work kind of bottom up from the product. So typically I always start in payment processing because you want to get like wins on the board as fast as possible. We can completely re-architect your pricing page, but like that's a month-long project probably to pull in like design and stakeholders and resources. So you want to ship stuff as fast as possible because that's what starts to compound. So to me, the easiest place to do that is payment processing. Overwhelmingly, people use Stripe. For some unknown reason, Stripe doesn't come configured out of the box with the best retry methods turned on. I'll never understand why, but for almost everybody, you can get some small immediate wins in payment processing by setting up their dunning process correctly. Typically after that, I would go to the cancellation flow because like you can lift churn immediately with some win back tactics in the cancellation flow. So the tactics typically are like pausing subscriptions, offering temporary discounts, or letting people switch plans or talk to customer service. If you go to kind of the New York Times cancellation flow, they try every single one of these tactics. Anything they can do at the bottom of the funnel to win you back. I've seen, especially in kind of ed tech products, where the underlying need is temporary, where like you're not going to learn to code forever. You're going to do it for 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 14 months, but eventually leave. Like I've seen those bottom of the funnel tactics drop churn like 10 to 30%. Would you think of that, what that does to the business as a whole? It like raises your enterprise value completely from like what might be a few weeks of work. So I know there's a lot of thought there.
Yeah, that makes sense, because when someone decides to cancel, if you maybe give him discount or just try to learn from their feedback why they're actually canceling the subscription, maybe you can get back more and more who are thinking the same way.
Yeah, exactly. And it's it's a Band-Aid. It doesn't solve the underlying problem.
Yeah.
But also like you're bleeding. Like you should use a Band-Aid. Like it helps, it works.
Yeah. And within your experience with most subscription businesses which you're consulting right now, what are like the common mistakes they do when they try to scale their ARR?
Yeah, I'd say it's a couple things. One is they don't stay focused in one area long enough to improve things.
Like
So they just kind of like
they
scattershot
arrived before.
tactics around. Yeah, 100%. It's super, super hard to stay focused. Another classic one is they look at competitors bigger than them and they try tactics that aren't like appropriate for their stage and complexity.
Yeah.
In the especially in the engineering world, like complexity slows down velocity, which slows down the features you can ship, which slows down how quickly your company moves. So like you should be really thoughtful in what you add to the code base and whether or not it works. I see a lot of companies who just kind of blindly copy what other people are doing, thinking that that's driving their success. The way I would think about it normally is like come up with what you should do, then look at who's really good at that, then copy those.
Yeah.
Not just like, you are building a learn to code product, copy everything Codecademy does. Half the stuff we're doing isn't working and we're just abandoning it and it's still live for some reason.
Yeah. So let's discuss the pricing strategies a little bit. You mentioned that there is like a pricing tactics that push users more towards the annual plans.
Yep.
Can you walk us through how actually this happens in behind the scenes?
Sure. I'll preface this that like this is one of my favorite pricing tricks, but it works in a very specific scenario. So for consumer subscription products or even B2B products, I put them kind of into two buckets. One is the never-ending use case. So for consumers, that's insurance, financing products, cars, rent, mortgages, utilities. Like these problems never go away. Like I will be using my utility provider here in Texas as long as I live in this house. The other bucket is kind of shorter term use cases. So diet, fitness, dating, habits, meditation, where like the retention cycles on these products tend to be under 12 months because people just kind of come in and out of these habits and they don't stay around. Codecademy is in the latter bucket where people don't want to learn to code forever. They want to learn to code like in spurts and then like leave and apply the skill and then come back. So this pricing trick works for the second bucket where your users are under 12 months typically. So for most of what I would call like the short and mid-stage habit products, the retention cycles are going to be on average for a cohort like 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, something like that. So the trick that we figured out at Codecademy and the trick that I see a lot of other big companies in our area use is you don't just discount your annual plans 10% or 20%. You discount them like so they're equivalent of 1 month more than your average monthly LTV. So we did this and it was a massive change in the business. So I think when we started, we probably discounted annuals 10% or 20% or something like that. And then we realized, let's say for sake of example, our average user stayed around 5 months. So we price our annual plans at 6 months. And then a good chunk of users jump to annual when they're buying for the LTV savings. This makes a huge impact on the business because you pull a lot more cash forward. So instead of like needing to wait for your LTV payback to be spread out, you collect way more cash up front. It lowers your churn, both like what I would say active and passive churn. So active is users actually going through the cancellation flow and canceling, and passive is payment processing basically. It really, really helps the payment processing churn because instead of trying a card 12 times in a year, you try a card once up front. So it makes a huge, huge impact on the business. The other implication of this is like you can look at big subscription companies like Headspace or Calm or Noom and figure out basically what their retention is by looking at the ratio of their price plans. So like if you go to Headspace and you look at how much they discount their annual plan, you can guess their monthly retention is like 1 month-ish less than that because everybody big knows this trick.
Yeah, that's interesting because you now see the pricing model from very different perspective because you're in the game. Yeah. So if I understand you well, you said that at Codecademy, you found out that the actual churn rate is around month 5, for example. And if the pricing
I can't remember, but let's say for example,
Yeah, just as an example. So if the monthly plan is $20, you offer yearly plan for 120, like 6 months.
Exactly.
month plus from the churn rate.
And you what's important is you show it on the page as discounted from 240 down to 120.
Yeah. And then after a year, if they say like a great value, they probably could stay for another year on the platform.
Yep, exactly.
That's great.
It really takes one of the trickiest things with LTV is like it takes time to measure. So like you don't really know your LTV from, let's say 2 years ago until most of those users have expired out of those cohorts. But we saw the LTV on our annual plan users just keep going up because like, let's say for sake of example, like, I don't know, somewhere between 40 and 60% of the annual plans renew. It's like every year you keep that cohort moving. So you take LTV from like, let's say it was like, I don't know, $100, $120 in the monthly users to like $400 in the annual plan user base. Spread out, it's hard to measure, but it makes it's tough to understate the value of this tactic for most subscription businesses if they sit in that bucket.
Then on the next iteration, probably you should exclude these guys who actually took the annual plan for your new tactic or your new strategy, how to actually put the pricing for the annual plan.
Yeah, exactly. I think most of the way I would suggest rolling out these tactics is you should A/B test them. Anything around tight pricing, you should A/B test. It's definitely worth doing.
And how should like subscription companies should think about experimenting this without actually maybe damaging or disrupting their current funnel for the users?
Yeah, great question. I'd say most pricing tests in subscription companies are just run on the new users. So they like the existing user base, with rare exception of the giant companies, you just kind of tend to leave them alone. So like you'll hear of Spotify or Netflix kind of global pricing raises. But most companies I've seen, you leave the dormant users alone and you don't raise their price. Because the math is probably not going to work with churn. And more practically speaking, it's also just super scary to like touch those cohorts because they're your revenue base.
Yeah, makes sense. And when it comes to like maybe mistakes or what's like the pricing insights or which most founders get wrong about how to set up that actually to work properly?
Yeah, I'd say it's a simple one. Is like most founders just never touch pricing. Like I've never talked to or worked with a company that wasn't emotional around their pricing, because it's just kind of like it's the number you have to put on all the value you've created, and it's really, really easy to get emotionally wrapped up in this. You should be testing pricing like once or twice a year, maybe not globally, but like discount rate, plan, international pricing sets, something like that. A really good pricing resource is Patrick Campbell from ProfitWell, who, like, if you probably just look him up on YouTube, he knows way more about pricing than I will ever will. But the number one mistake is they just set pricing when they start and they never change.
Yeah. That's great. So by now we covered the Codecademy, the pricing thing here, which like the tactic which actually brings more revenue to the company. And your next chapter is Uber. So can you share us something about that? You spent some time there. So what like working in company who actually scales a lot fast teach you about these systems, these pricing things?
Yeah, definitely. I think my work at Uber was very different. So I ran like a product team that did the machine learning ranking algorithm behind the home feed of Uber Eats. So if you ever use like Instagram home feed, Google search, something like that, they're all powered by ranking algorithms. So like, what do you show the user based on what you know about them? Completely different than the subscription work. It's probably the most complicated problem I've ever worked on with some of the best engineers and data scientists in the world. So when you're at a company like that, you really see like the top level of talent. And like at a company like Codecademy, like the team is really good, but the product hasn't been optimized that much. So there's like more low-hanging fruit that exists. Like the Uber Eats home feed, maybe I'm going to guess like 200 math PhDs have worked on that before my team currently got there. So you really have to like push the boundaries pretty far. You see just like, world-class product and engineering operate at a big level. And the trickier thing is more like navigating trade-offs. So Uber Eats has so much traffic and their A/B testing technology is so good that instead of at Codecademy, we'd launch an A/B test and we'd test like a primary metric and like 2 secondary metrics maybe. At Uber Eats, you can measure 100 metrics. And it's like in any test, some of them go up, some of them go down. Like, how do you know? And you have so much traffic, you can be statistically significant to like really, really small decimals. It's like, how do you know you're making the right trade-offs at any given time is much, much harder.
Can you share some example for like a decision which you made? You mentioned trade-offs. How do you make them in a company who actually grows really, really fast?
Yeah, I'd say the hardest part of trade-offs is like getting alignment on a framework with all of your stakeholders. Because if it's just up to you, it's not that hard to make kind of snap decisions of like metrics 1, 2, and 3 went up by a decent amount, metric 4 went down by a small amount. That makes sense to me. Let's just ship it. But inherently, like I sit in a specific part of the company. I have certain interests, but like the heads of the grocery business, the heads of the ads business, the heads of the merchant businesses, like there's so many stakeholders in a 3-sided marketplace. The hardest thing is getting alignment. We had a really great head of data science named Brett, who came up with kind of like a 4-box model of revenue and profitability. So if you every experiment, like those are the 2 things you're really driving is profit and top line revenue. And like charted all of our past experiments on that box and basically drew us like a trade-off curve. So it's like if we get above this threshold, it's success. So there's a certain like ratio of top line dollars we're willing to take in for profit loss, but we don't want to make inefficient trades. And it's like that's the type of thing you only see at giant companies with super sophisticated problems.
Yeah, so it's like more alignment with the whole stakeholders when it comes to like big decisions. It's not something which you can make it on your own with the data which you have, but you need to share with the rest.
Yeah, it's tough to underscore the complexity. It's great as a product person to see that because like Uber Eats is a 3-sided marketplace. So you have the merchants, the consumers, the delivery people, but also like 3-sided regional marketplaces. So those only really exist in cities. So even though like you think about it as a global marketplace, it's like 1,000 50-mile radius marketplaces that all have different levels of competition and saturation and supply and demand and price sensitivity.
Yeah. And Uber has pretty huge growth, which most of companies can't or are not doing. So what they actually do differently than the rest? Is there like any tip which you can share about that?
It's a great question. I think I was probably there from 2021 to 2023. So like I missed the big growth years. I think what stood out to me at the company when I was there is like one, just the level of talent is really, really high. So like in most companies, you'll find of the different disciplines. So like product design, marketing, HR, engineering, they're like different levels of maturity. So you might have like a really, really strong engineering team, but you're just getting going at marketing. So engineering is pretty sophisticated, but marketing is not sophisticated. At Uber Eats, like everyone is really, really good. So it's like you don't have it's almost like there's not a lot of easy wins to be had. Everyone's working on pretty complicated problems. And it's not like you're going to find a playbook written by a bigger company because Uber is the biggest of what they are. So you're almost at like the threshold of how you expand out. So when I was there, we worked a lot on like how do you balance a food delivery marketplace with a grocery delivery marketplace with other different types of goods because they all have different unit economics. They all have different like usage cycles. And if you want to keep users on just food delivery, pushing them into groceries, you're going to lose some of them because that's not what they want in the moment. So again, it's like how do you make sophisticated trade-offs? So really just like it was seeing how complicated those big businesses are. And it's not surprising that when anybody tries to start like competitors to those marketplaces, like overwhelmingly they don't work.
Yeah.
Like a memory I'll have forever is my first or second day at Uber. It was the realization of like how many engineers work on every part of that app. So it's probably like tens, if not hundreds of people who just work on the driver license upload camera feature. because that dictates like supply in the marketplace.
Yeah, that with the talents is pretty interesting. I read the story about Netflix, and they had like pretty similar tactic because they attracted the top talents and just make bigger density of them.
Yep.
So, and if they feel that someone is like not growing anymore, they just let them go on the
Yeah, I've
moment
heard
when
that
they
too.
decided. So it's pretty brave from these companies, but that's why they're in the game in the top.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. And after everything like Codecademy, Uber, and now with advising business, how actually how is your philosophy about growth, about change?
Yeah, good question. I think for growing companies, like I think about the growth of companies in kind of like three buckets. So you have to make something successful, you need like an acquisition motion that works, like a
Yeah,
product that delivers value, and then you have to monetize it effectively.
yeah,
So most companies that I'd say are in the like $2 to $10 million range are really only working on like one of those motions, and then
mm,
like maybe do a little bit of work in the second motion. So typically that's dictated by the skill sets of the founders. So the founders are engineers and product people. They're mostly working on the value the product delivers. They kind
yeah,
of like, if they get to $2 million, they have some acquisition motion that works, but they're not expertise in marketing. They typically don't work at monetization at all. So it's like, as you get bigger, you need expertise and advice in all of those areas, as I'm sure you find in your business too. Um, and really, like, to create enterprise value, you need all three of those. Because like one of the only sustainable points in business is out monetizing everybody else, so you can spend more on acquisition. Because like the acquisition costs always go up as you saturate channels.
yeah. I noticed pretty similar with tech founders because they focus a lot more on delivering great product, but they
Yep.
forgot to position it well to make like premium product out of it, or just to sell more, to make more revenue, and then start improving even more and more. So this is a loop which sometimes could be like leading them into the dead end because they don't invest a lot in marketing and sales. They promote
Yep.
they develop the product, but then no one knows that product actually.
Yeah, totally. Or early days of Codecademy was the reverse story. Or like we were killing it on the distribution and product value side. So you're not getting 25 million people a year on the site without those things being really, really good. But we hadn't built the monetization side yet. But without the monetization side, like, this business isn't sustainable. You have to do all three to create enterprise value. Luckily we got to a point with Codecademy where we did all of them with luck and a ton of hard work. The business sold for $500 million plus, like 2 or 3 years ago. So it's like we got to that point, but that experience made me realize like the value of all of that.
Yeah, yeah. So we're coming to the end of this podcast. So I have only two more questions. One of them is about what's like the mindset shift which you wish to had, like let me repeat this. Uh, we're coming to the end of the podcast, and I have only two questions for you. So what's like the one mindset shift which you wish more founders adopt earlier?
It's a great question. I think the transition I normally see companies going through is at some point you have to move from what I would call like founder-led development to more professional product management.
Mm.
Founder-led development is really like you understand a market and your instincts tell you what to build, and you just work really, really fast. But at some point, like, that stops working, or you have to work on hiring an executive team and growing the company. But I see founders stay in founder-led development for too long,
Mm.
and like you just end up launching a bunch of stuff that doesn't work. The reason they stay there is they don't measure things. So like if you know what to measure and your instincts are still working, like, by all means keep doing that. You'll never be as fast as a development firm is when the founder just tells everybody what to do. But like you have to measure stuff effectively to know if the things you're doing are working. Because the dirty secret of startups is like there's not two options between like working and not working. There's a third option, which is making things worse.
Yep.
And like a lot of people ship stuff that makes their core metrics work without realizing it. And you pick it up 6 months later, which is the worst case scenario.
Yep. So Before asking the last question, do you maybe think that we missed something which you want to add as some additional thoughts?
No, I think that's it. I mean, yeah, as you can probably tell, I think about this stuff all day. I write everything on my blog at subscriptionindex.com. I'm in the process of like building a ton of useful calculators on there. So if you want to calculate your growth ceiling, your A/B testing velocity, if you want resources on pricing or churn or any of that, it's subscriptionindex.com. Index like a stock index. Yeah, I have a lot to say on all of these topics, but I'll try to keep it.
Yeah. So before closing this, I usually end this podcast by, if you had to leave like any SaaS leaders or someone in the subscription business with just one piece of advice about growth, what would it be?
Yeah, I'd say it's starting to measure stuff early. So in the product management world, we have something called North Star metrics, which is kind of like some measurement of overlap between user value and business value. It's hard to define. Start with a general metric. Measure it, look at it every week, and ideally you should see it going up if your stuff is working. The danger in the startup game is just burning time and resources on stuff that doesn't work. Because even if you keep the capital, like you only have a certain amount of motivation to stay in these problem sets for a certain number of years.
Yeah, and if you measure something, you can always improve it.
Yeah,
Without
exactly.
measurements, you don't know what to do next. Great. Daniel, thank you for being here today. I really enjoyed the conversation. So if you feel that there is anything, just feel free to add. From what I learned, we covered a lot, from your experience in Codecademy to Uber to subscription-based models to pricings, and at the end with the mindset. So if you enjoyed this episode, just follow the podcast for listening more conversations with SaaS leaders who actually share their experience and what actually works in the business. I'm your host, Milan Savov, and until next time, keep leading, keep scaling, and keep growing. See you soon.